The crisis is unfolding in real time, and it's worse than anyone imagined. Meghan Markle's brand, carefully constructed over years of strategic positioning, celebrity management, and relentless PR, is teetering on the brink of total collapse. And the catalyst? Netflix finally doing what they should have done before signing a massive content deal, demanding real, independently verifiable audience numbers. Not the inflated social media metrics Archewell kept presenting as proof of reach, not the carefully curated demographic snapshots designed to make performance look better than reality. Actual streaming data that shows how many people watched Sussex content, how long they watched, whether they completed episodes, and whether the projects drove the subscriber growth Netflix paid millions to generate. The gap between what Meghan claimed and what the data revealed wasn't just embarrassing, it was potentially fraudulent. We're watching a brand built on perception of influence discover that when someone demands proof of actual influence, the entire foundation crumbles. And the crisis isn't just professional embarrassment. It's legal exposure, it's financial catastrophe, it's reputational destruction so complete that recovery might be impossible. Netflix demanded real numbers. Meghan couldn't provide them. And now the crisis is cascading through every partnership, every financial relationship, every claim she's ever made about her reach and impact. The moment of truth came when Netflix's analytics team ran routine audit comparisons between Archewell's reported performance and Netflix's back-end data. Standard practice for content deals this size, making sure external producers aren't gaming metrics or misrepresenting results. But what they found with the Sussex content was staggering. The documentary that Meghan's team claimed reached 35 million viewers, Netflix's actual data showed 3.8 million unique views, with completion rates under 40%. That's not a rounding error. That's claiming 9 times the actual audience. The children's programming that was supposed to be groundbreaking family content, so poorly received in testing that Netflix shelved additional episodes without releasing them, losing millions in development costs. The podcast integration that promised cross-platform engagement, fewer than 200,000 people actually clicked through from Netflix to listen, despite claims of massive multimedia audience synergy. Project after project showing the same pattern, astronomical claims colliding with catastrophic reality. The brand started wobbling when Netflix sent the first formal inquiry letter, a careful, legally precise document asking Archewell to explain the methodology behind their audience reporting. How did they calculate the 35 million viewers? What metrics were they using? Could they provide source data and third-party verification? The letter, leaked to industry insiders within days, sent shockwaves through entertainment circles. Because when major platforms start demanding methodology explanations, it means they found discrepancies they can't explain away. And when those letters leak, it means someone inside Netflix wants the industry to know they're taking action against a partner who apparently misled them. Meghan's team took 3 weeks to respond, and when the response finally came, it was reportedly a masterclass in evasion. Vague references to industry-standard reach calculations without explaining what those were. Mentions of social media impressions and earned media value. Claims that they'd included people who saw promotional materials without clarifying that those people never actually watched the content. Each attempted explanation just made the deception more obvious. The crisis deepened when Netflix commissioned third-party auditors to analyze all Sussex content performance independently, not relying on Archewell's numbers or even Netflix's internal assumptions, bringing in entertainment analytics firms that specialize in fraud detection to examine the complete data trail. And what those auditors found was damning. Evidence of systematic inflation across every metric, viewership numbers that appeared to count anyone who watched even 30 seconds as a complete view, engagement metrics that included negative social media mentions as if they were positive, demographic reach calculations that aggregated everyone who could have potentially seen content rather than people who actually did. The auditor's report, portions of which inevitably leaked, used language like material misrepresentation and pattern of deceptive reporting. Those aren't terms used for honest mistakes. Those are fraud indicators. The brand crisis accelerated when other Netflix projects started getting scrutinized using the same audit standards. Because if the documentary numbers were inflated by 900%, what about everything else? When auditors looked at Harry's on-camera appearances in various Netflix content, they found viewer sentiment was overwhelmingly negative. Focus groups describing him as inauthentic, reading from scripts, and uncomfortable to watch. Completion rates for episodes featuring Harry prominently were 30% lower than episodes he wasn't in. Not because audiences disliked the content generally, they specifically disliked him. Yet Archewell had been positioning Harry's royal background and military service as major selling points, justifying premium production budgets. The reality was he was actively hurting performance, and Meghan's team had been hiding that fact while continuing to feature him based on false assumptions about his audience appeal. The financial implications put the brand on the brink. Netflix paid Archewell millions in development funds. If those funds were secured based on misrepresented audience metrics, Netflix has grounds for clawback litigation. Multiple entertainment lawyers told trade publications that if the reported discrepancies are accurate, Netflix could potentially recover most or all of the development money. And that's just the beginning. If Netflix establishes precedent that Sussex metrics were fraudulent, Spotify can explore recovering their investment. WME might seek to exit representation agreements without penalty based on material misrepresentation. Every brand partnership, every financial relationship becomes questionable when the fundamental value proposition, audience reach, proves to be fabricated. The Montecito lifestyle costs millions annually. If all the income streams dry up while facing potential 8-figure clawback demands, the financial picture goes from strained to catastrophic in months. The crisis unfolded publicly in waves, each revelation worse than the last. First came news that Netflix was questioning the numbers. Then leaks about the scale of the discrepancies. 900% inflation wasn't exaggeration, it was documented fact. Then whistleblowers from inside Archewell Productions describing a culture where they were pressured to make numbers tell the right story rather than reflect reality. Former employees saying Meghan personally reviewed and approved reports she had to know were misleading. Industry lawyers explaining why this pattern elevated beyond normal PR spin into potential fraud territory. Each wave of revelations reinforced the previous ones. This wasn't misunderstanding or different interpretations of metrics. This was systematic deception over extended time period with clear financial motivation. The palace reaction has been strategically calibrated vindication. They've apparently known about the Netflix metrics problems for months through entertainment industry backchannels. Multiple sources confirmed they have documentation proving they raised concerns about Meghan's credibility and truthfulness before the marriage. But they stayed quiet during the Netflix contract period, not wanting to appear to be attacking or undermining. Now that Netflix is exposing the issues independently, palace sources are simply confirming when asked, yes, we knew there were problems. Yes, we tried to warn that claims didn't match reality. Yes, we have files documenting everything. The message is clear without being explicit. We told everyone she couldn't be trusted. You didn't listen. Now you're discovering we were right. And that retrospective validation is almost worse for Meghan than direct attacks would be, because it makes everyone who defended her or partnered with her look like they were manipulated. The brand wobbled toward the brink as the crisis destroyed credibility on multiple fronts simultaneously. If Meghan lied about Netflix numbers, did she lie about everything? The racism allegations get re-examined skeptically, the mental health claims get questioned, the victimhood narrative gets analyzed as potential manipulation. Every sympathetic interview gets recontextualized as possible performance. Once you're proven to have systematically misrepresented facts in one major arena, people start questioning everything you've ever said. And for someone whose entire brand was built on being the authentic truth teller standing up to institutional lies, getting exposed as the one doing the lying is terminal damage. The brand was brave honesty against powerful corruption. The crisis revealed calculating deception for personal profit. There's no rebranding that bridges that contradiction. The unfolding crisis has second and third order effects, multiplying the damage. Charities that partnered with Sussex brand facing donor backlash about why they associated with proven dishonesty. Media outlets that ran favorable Meghan coverage getting criticized for puff-piece journalism that didn't investigate claims. The Sussex Squad online defenders fracturing, as even they can't explain $35 million becoming $3.8 million. Everyone who vouched for Meghan or allied with her brand now facing association with fraud allegations. And they're all distancing simultaneously, creating cascading collapse where each organization's decision to distance validates the next one distancing. The brand death spiral hitting terminal velocity. The crisis revealed what many suspected but couldn't prove. Meghan doesn't actually have an audience at scale. She has name recognition from marrying Harry. She has media coverage because controversy generates clicks. She has social media followers that appear to be substantially fake based on third-party bot analysis. But actual people who will watch her content, buy products she endorses, engage with projects she produces, that audience doesn't exist at anything close to the numbers she's been claiming. And in an entertainment industry, you can fake a lot of things temporarily, but you can't fake people actually watching. The streaming numbers don't lie. When they say 3.8 million instead of 35 million, that's objective reality. And objective reality just destroyed a brand built on subjective perception. Netflix executives reportedly feel personally betrayed, which makes the crisis worse. They went out on a limb signing unproven producers based on celebrity and promised reach. They defended the deal internally when early projects underperformed. They gave multiple chances to deliver content that worked. And in exchange for that patience and support, they apparently got systematic deception about performance metrics. Leaked internal emails show executives using words like conned and played, suggesting this isn't just business disappointment, but personal anger at feeling manipulated. That emotional element means this doesn't get quietly resolved. Netflix wants the industry to know they're the victims here, not the villains. The Sussex content failed while lying about the extent of failure. And that narrative, Netflix as victim of fraud rather than party to failure, requires public, adversarial, documented exposure of exactly how they were deceived. The brand on the brink is wobbling toward total collapse because every attempted defense just makes it worse. Deny the discrepancies? Netflix releases more data proving them. Claim different methodology? Auditors explain why that methodology was deliberately misleading. Attack Netflix's credibility? They're a multi-billion-dollar platform with everything to lose from false accusations. Pivot to victimhood? You can't be the victim when you're the one who lied. There's no defensive play that works when the opposition has objective data and you have subjective spin. The brand is teetering because the foundation it was built on, trust in Meghan's authenticity and honesty, just got demolished by proof of systematic deception. The crisis attracts legal scrutiny from multiple directions. IRS examining whether inflated metrics were used to justify tax positions on development funds. California state authorities looking at whether financial structures violated corporate governance. Federal prosecutors expressing interest in whether the pattern constitutes wire fraud if misleading reports crossed state lines. Criminal exposure transforming from theoretical possibility to active investigation. And each legal inquiry forces document production, depositions, testimony under oath. The crisis won't just play out in court of public opinion, it'll play out in actual courts with serious criminal consequences if prosecutors find what they're apparently looking for. The brand reached the brink when the commercial partnerships evaporated simultaneously. Companies that had been in discussion for Sussex endorsements pulled offers within days of the Netflix news. Corporate lawyers advising that association with proven metrics fraud creates unacceptable liability. Marketing teams running projections showing name recognition without actual audience delivers zero ROI. The partnership's pipeline that was supposed to generate millions in annual income disappeared overnight. and the existing relationships started terminating. WME reassessing representation value, Netflix moving toward deal cancellation, Spotify potentially exploring recovery of their investment. The commercial engine that was supposed to fund the Montecito lifestyle seized up completely. The crisis unfolds while other scandals are reaching critical mass simultaneously. Maxwell revelations about questionable associations, Archwell Foundation facing financial scrutiny, Palace investigating false statements during vetting, multiple legal exposures converging, and now Netflix proving systematic metrics fraud. Each scandal alone would be manageable with enough PR resources, but happening simultaneously, they create pattern recognition. This isn't bad luck. This is someone who lies about everything, getting exposed on multiple fronts at once. And that pattern recognition is devastating because it makes people re-examine everything with new skepticism. Every claim becomes suspect. Every victim narrative becomes potential manipulation. Every tier becomes performance. The brand on the brink isn't just about Netflix. It's existential crisis about whether Meghan Markle has any commercial value beyond her title. If the audience she claims doesn't exist, if the influence she markets is fabricated, if the metrics she sells partnerships on are fraudulent, what exactly is she offering? You can't sell authentic voice when you're proven deceiver. You can't sell humanitarian values when you're exposed as opportunist. You can't sell influence when the data proves you have none. The crisis is forcing the fundamental question: was there ever real brand value here? Or was it always just perception managed through PR and strategic deception? And if it was always just perception, what happens when perception meets reality and loses? The unfolding disaster is unprecedented because of who Meghan is. Royal adjacent, globally famous, positioned as progressive voice against institutional power. The scale of her claims and the scale of her platform made the fraud that much more visible when it got exposed. This isn't some minor influencer padding follower counts. This is someone who pitched herself to major corporations as having genuine cultural reach, and then apparently delivered fabricated metrics to hide catastrophic performance. The crisis unfolds on global stage with hundreds of millions watching, and every revelation, every whistleblower, every data leak adds another chapter to the collapse. The brand won't survive this. That's becoming clear as the crisis unfolds. You can survive scandal if you maintain credibility. You can survive failure if you maintain honesty. But you can't survive being proven dishonest about your most fundamental value proposition. Meghan sold herself as authentic truth teller with massive audience reach. Netflix proved she was neither authentic nor honest, and her audience's fraction of what she claimed. The contradiction is terminal. The brand doesn't get damaged, it gets destroyed. And the crisis unfolding in real time is just the process of everyone realizing simultaneously that the emperor never had clothes, the influence was never real, and the metrics were always lies. Netflix demanded real numbers. Meghan's brand was built on fake ones. And now it's not on the brink. It's over the edge, falling, with no recovery possible from this level of exposed deception. The industry whispernet, the unofficial back-channel communications between power players, is absolutely savage right now. Studio heads sharing the Netflix numbers with competitors, agents warning clients away from any Sussex association, producers who'd been pitched Sussex collaborations going public with how the metrics they were shown don't match Netflix's audit, entertainment lawyers circulating memos about the legal risks of partnering with brands that have documented history of fraudulent data reporting. That informal communication network is more powerful than any official blacklist because it's impossible to fight or refute. There's no one to appeal to. Just a collective understanding spreading through Hollywood that Meghan Markle's brand is toxic and her team can't be trusted. Career-ending reputation damage happening through whispered warnings rather than public accusations. The streaming wars context makes this crisis particularly damaging for everyone involved. In an environment where platforms are fighting desperately for subscribers and quality content, being associated with massive documented fraud is career-ending for the executives who sign deals. Multiple Netflix vice presidents are reportedly facing internal reviews about why they greenlit Sussex content without adequate vetting. That means those executives have personal, professional motivation to prove they were victims of deception rather than authors of bad judgment. The best way to prove you were deceived is documenting every false claim, every inflated metric, every misleading representation Archwell made. This isn't just Netflix versus Meghan anymore. It's Netflix executives fighting for their own careers by making Meghan the villain of the story. And executives protecting their jobs are ruthless in ways corporations, being diplomatic, never are. The social media analytics that Netflix commissioned revealed patterns even more damaging than the viewership fraud. Third-party firms analyzing Meghan's follower base found evidence consistent with massive bot purchases and engagement manipulation. Accounts following her that had zero other activity, engagement spikes that didn't correspond to actual content releases, geographic distributions that didn't match her claimed demographics, comment sections filled with generic praise from accounts created within days of each other. The organic engagement, real humans genuinely interested, was estimated at less than 20% of her total following, meaning she'd been using social media numbers that were 80% fake as proof of audience that would translate to Netflix viewership. But purchased followers don't watch shows. Bots don't complete content. The fraudulent social metrics she used to secure deals delivered exactly zero real viewers. Harry's role in the crisis is becoming a subplot that adds personal devastation to professional disaster. He'd apparently been told by Meghan's team that audiences loved his contributions, that his military background and royal perspective were drawing viewers. But Netflix's engagement data showed the opposite. Viewer sentiment toward Harry-focused content was overwhelmingly negative. Focus groups described him as seeming coached, inauthentic, and uncomfortable on camera. Completion rates for episodes featuring him dropped 30–40% compared to content without him. He wasn't adding value, he was actively hurting performance. And Meghan's team had been hiding this from him for months, continuing to feature him in content while knowing audiences disliked it. The professional humiliation of discovering you're the reason projects fail while thinking you were the draw is crushing. And it's another crack in a marriage already fracturing under too many exposed lies. The whistleblower testimonies emerging from former Archwell Productions employees are transforming this from possible incompetence to apparent deliberate fraud. Staff members describing work environments where they were explicitly told to create reports that told the right story rather than reflected reality, where questioning inflated numbers led to being marginalized or pushed out, where Meghan personally reviewed and approved misleading metrics reports. One former employee provided emails showing Meghan asking for viewership reports to be reframed more positively after seeing initial honest assessments. Another described being instructed to count social media impressions as equivalent to actual views. These testimonies, if accurate, prove systematic, intentional deception rather than honest misunderstanding of metrics. And they strengthen Netflix's legal position enormously while destroying any remaining benefit of doubt Meghan might have claimed. The commercial partnerships that were still in negotiation evaporated within 72 hours of the Netflix audit becoming public knowledge. Companies that had been discussing Sussex endorsements pulled offers overnight. Corporate legal departments advising that association with documented metrics fraud creates unacceptable liability and reputation risk. Marketing teams running projections showing that name recognition without actual audience reach delivers zero return on investment. The deals potentially worth millions in annual income disappeared instantly, and existing partners started examining exit clauses. WME reconsidering representation value. Remaining charitable partnerships reassessing association risks. The commercial infrastructure that was supposed to fund the Montecito lifestyle and support the Sussex brand seized up completely in days. The media retrospective analysis has been particularly brutal. Entertainment journalists revisiting every Sussex project with knowledge of the real versus claimed performance metrics, finding PR statements from Archewell that directly contradicted Netflix's actual data by orders of magnitude. Meghan's team had claimed groundbreaking cultural impact for content that barely registered in audience metrics. They'd positioned projects as zeitgeist-defining when social sentiment analysis showed most people who saw headlines never actually watched. They'd suggested brand partnerships were eager to work with them when corporate documents showed companies pulling back due to performance concerns. Every historical PR claim now being re-examined under harsh light of data, proving it was fabrication. And each re-examination adds another nail to the brand's coffin. The palace's 18-month private investigation into Meghan's business dealings has apparently uncovered corroborating evidence that makes the Netflix fraud look like one piece of a larger pattern. Royal sources say they have communications between Archewell and PR firms explicitly discussing how to massage metrics and create better optics around underperforming projects. Documents showing Meghan personally reviewing and approving reports she had to know contained inflated numbers. Evidence that when Netflix asked uncomfortable questions about performance gaps, Archewell deflected with PR spin rather than honest data. The palace isn't releasing this documentation publicly, but they're making sure Netflix's legal team knows it exists and is available if litigation proceeds. The message? We have corroboration that this was deliberate, systematic deception, not innocent errors, and we'll support your case. The children have become an especially heartbreaking element as the crisis unfolds. Archie and Lilibet's images and stories were used in promotional materials and partnership pitches for content deals that turned out to be secured through fraudulent metrics claims. The ethics of leveraging your children to sell deals built on lies is being questioned by child advocacy organizations. And the palace's accelerating consultations with family law experts about guardianship structures aren't just about protecting royal lineage. They're about ensuring two innocent children aren't further exploited by a mother whose judgment and honesty are now documented as fundamentally questionable. Legal protections being discussed include palace approval requirements for any commercial ventures involving the children, any public appearances, any use of their images in business contexts. Netflix's board of directors receiving regular briefings on the Sussex deal disaster has created layers of corporate accountability pressure. Board members demanding explanations for why due diligence didn't catch the inflated metrics before contract signing, why audit processes didn't identify discrepancies earlier, why contractual protections against material misrepresentation weren't adequate. That board-level scrutiny means internal heads will roll unless executives can definitively prove they were victims of fraud rather than perpetrators of bad business judgment. So every corporate incentive pushes toward Netflix pursuing maximum legal action against Archewell. This has to be public, adversarial, fully documented to demonstrate to shareholders and directors that fault lies entirely with Sussex team deception, not with Netflix's judgment or processes. The financial forensics teams Netflix deployed are finding evidence of concerning fund flows beyond simple metrics inflation. Development money paid by Netflix to Archewell Productions that then moved to other Sussex-controlled entities through transactions that obscure the complete trail. Production budgets supposedly spent on content creation showing questionable documentation about actual expenditures. Invoices from vendors that can't be verified or contacted for confirmation. The pattern raises questions extending beyond metrics fraud to potential misappropriation of Netflix's development funds. If production money was diverted to personal expenses or unrelated ventures, that's criminal fraud, carrying serious prison time. And Netflix's forensic accountants are documenting every questionable transaction with precision, specifically to support potential criminal referrals if evidence warrants. The brand on the brink is discovering that there's no defensive playbook for this situation. Every attempted response makes things worse. Deny the audit results? Netflix releases more granular data proving them. Claim methodology differences? Independent auditors explain why Archewell's methodology was deliberately deceptive. Attack Netflix's motives? They're a multi-billion-dollar platform with everything to lose from false accusations and zero reason to fabricate. Pivot to victimhood and persecution? You can't claim victim status when you're the one who committed fraud. Meghan's trying to find an angle that works and discovering there isn't one. When the opposition has objective data and you have subjective spin, when they have corroborating whistleblowers and you have a history of dishonesty, there's no winning move, just variations of losing. The crisis is reaching the point where even Meghan's most devoted defenders are going quiet. The Sussex Squad that spent years attacking anyone who criticized her is fracturing in the face of numbers they can't explain away. How do you defend 35 million becoming 3.8 million? How do you claim media conspiracy when the evidence is Netflix's own internal data? How do you maintain someone is truthful when whistleblowers say she personally approved fraudulent reports? Some are doubling down into increasingly absurd conspiracy theories, but most are just going silent, unable to reconcile the brand they defended with the fraud that's been exposed. And that silence from people who defended her for years speaks louder than any criticism could about how indefensible this has become. The endgame is total brand destruction, because credibility lost at this scale is unrecoverable. Meghan built everything on being the authentic voice, telling hard truths against powerful, corrupt institutions. Netflix proved she was lying about her most fundamental claim, that people wanted to hear from her. You can't be the authentic truth teller when you're exposed as systematic deceiver. You can't fight institutional corruption when you were perpetrating the corruption. You can't be voice for millions when the data proves those millions don't exist. The contradictions are too fundamental, the hypocrisy too obvious. The brand doesn't get damaged or wounded, it gets destroyed completely. And there's no rebuilding from this. Once you're definitively proven to have built success on lies, once major corporations document your fraud in detail, once whistleblowers confirm intentional deception, you're finished. Not on the brink anymore, over the edge. And the crisis unfolding is just the slow-motion process of everyone realizing the influence was never real, the metrics were always fake, and the authentic voice was the biggest lie of all.